Hello and welcome to my Game Week 7 preview for champmanFPL. How was your Game Week 6? Quite a low average, I think, despite the games going to form pretty much. The hot favourites just didn't score as many as they might have done, aside from Tottenham. The teams we expected to win won, but they won by the odd goal where they might have won by 3 or 4. So yeah, that's just how it goes. But the week did pretty much go to the sim data. I think the biggest surprise for me was Arsenal not scoring. But then we had Unsworth man of the match, and then I watched Luke's review this morning, and Henry had three or four shots on target, I think. So there you go. In any given week, that can happen. Henry was wasteful. Unsworth was man of the match. That can happen in individual sim. From the picks of the week, we had 4 out of 6 got something. Henry was one of the missed out, along with Viduka. As I mentioned, Henry especially unlucky there. We probably should have got 5 out of 6 there, to be fair. And Leeds had 6 shots on target in their game, so they might have won on another day. But you're never going to get absolutely everything go your way. As I've said many times, with the sim data, we're just playing the odds. And in terms of the picks of the week, we came out on top. So I scored 51 myself. So that puts me rank 89 overall. So not too bad. And when I wildcarded last week, I did expect that this week that's just gone would possibly be a tough week. But then many of my players have got 2 or even 3 home games in a row coming up, so I kind of knew I'd maybe pay a little bit of a price this week to have majority home games coming up, and I think a lot of you did the same. To get a pretty average score of 51 and only drop 20 places, where I am for the weeks coming up, I'm okay with that. I got through in the man-on Sean Wright-Phillips Cup by 1 point again, so it wasn't quite the Titanic battle where I got through 87 to 86 previously, but I got through 51 to 50 I think this week against FPL Richie. So unlucky Richie, but I think you're ranked higher than me in the overall game, and I know you use a lot of the content of these videos, so hopefully you're not too upset about letting me throw in the cup, and if you can keep yourself ranked higher than me in the actual game. So swings and roundabouts there. Anyway, on to the game week 8 preview. So as the leak and Luke's review / preview has already happened, we'll touch on some of the content from that. Which is really useful as Luke sort of hammered home some of the key points that I've mentioned in the last couple of weeks. So without doing those to death, it gives us an opportunity to look at some of the comments from Luke's review / preview in the context of this week's data. So that's quite cool this week that we can do that. Okay, so on we go then to Arsenal versus Charlton. So first of all, what I thought we'd do, again, touching on what Luke said in his review preview, I'd already decided to do this because, as I spoke about last week, I know in recent weeks, some of you have sort of looked at the player stats and sort of said, "Oh, I was put off by this, or wasn't sure about this or that," in terms of the player stats. And I did mention last week that the thing really to look at is, or the main thing to look at is how the teams are going to set up and sort of how the scoring goes within the 20 sim data. So that's not to say the player stats are a complete waste of time, because I wouldn't do them if I thought they were a waste of time, but you have to think of them in the context of the actual game that we're playing and what we know about the sim that we're playing. So I thought I'd add in, sort of from this week onwards, give you this graphic of how the teams are going to set up so we can sort of focus in on that a bit more. So Arsenal in this game at home, they're going to attack against a weaker opposition, and Charlton are low rep going away to high rep, so they're going to try and defend. But they're not as defensive as some teams sometimes can be. They're not going to have men behind the ball, and they are going to a counter-attack. So it's not ultra defensive, but nonetheless it is still defensive, and they're much weaker than Arsenal, who are going to attack them. So therefore you'd expect Arsenal to win the game. So the 20 sims then, so Arsenal 2.7 goals a game average, really high, but Charlton themselves 0.75. So just touching on there what I said about the tactics, they're not ultra defensive. So we've seen in previous weeks the likes of Villa and Leicester going away to Man United, they've been down around 0.3, 0.4 goals a game. So that Charlton aren't quite as bad as that, and they have scored twice a few times. But nonetheless, they're nowhere near as good as Arsenal, and Arsenal are going to attack them. So, of course, Arsenal are likely to win the game. So 2.7 goals a game is really high, 17 wins out of 20, but only a 50% chance clean sheet. So again, as I mentioned, we've seen a bigger chance than that for a clean sheet, haven't we, in previous weeks for different teams. So it's hardly nailed on for Arsenal to keep a clean sheet, but they should win. But a caveat to that maybe is we've already had the leak from the scout, and all he's told us is that Stefan Voss and Edu are going to start. But what does it mean? So, I mean, I don't have the answer to that. I don't know what the starting lineup is, but Arsenal are at home to a weak team. So it could be a full rep 12. It could be. That is a bit of a red flag for me. Edu's starting. Edu is a left-sided central midfielder. Giovanni Brang-Vonkhorst is also a left-sided central midfielder. So I don't like the chances of Van Bronckhorst starting. Whereas Stefan Voss is centre-back. I mean, Campbell's already suspended. So that's probably not going to affect too many people. I wouldn't have thought Campbell wasn't playing anyway. But yeah, I don't like the chances of Van Bronckhorst starting. And Arsenal being at home, what does it mean? It could mean a bigger rep than this, but I don't know the actual answer. It's just a bit of a red flag. So in terms of the player stats, I mean, what do? We don't know, do we? We don't know now. What will happen? It's up to you if you want to gamble on it or not, really. So I think we probably just move on from it. Okay, Villa and Newcastle. So Villa at home, we'll see a pattern here. Villa at home are going to attack. They're not going to have men behind the ball, and their passing style is mixed, which is a pretty good recipe. Attacking and mixed passing is a pretty good recipe for goals, and we'll see that consistently through the season. Villa at home is a pretty good bet for a couple of goals. Newcastle, so this is well documented. Newcastle play long ball under Joe Kinnear every game, but it's their mentality that changes really depending on who they're playing and whether they're home or away. So Villa aren't massively repped, so they're not going to go defensive. They'll just go normal. So they're not going to shut up shop themselves. Again, they're not going to have men behind the ball. So Villa just ever so slightly more attacking than Newcastle. And there you go. Villa ever so slightly more attacking than Newcastle, and they have ever so slightly higher average goals. They've got one more win. But Newcastle did come out on clean sheets, interestingly. Villa not too likely to keep a clean sheet. Newcastle did it a reasonable amount, although you wouldn't put your mortgage on it. So yeah, both teams reasonable chance of scoring, but Villa's average is helped by a couple of fours, and I spoke about this when we looked at Newcastle Derby last week. Newcastle's long ball tactic is not great really against top flight opposition. It even says in the manual that you shouldn't do it in the Premier League, and sometimes it does backfire against anybody. So Derby put 2 past them last week. It could have been more, as we saw in Luke's review, and we see that in a couple of the sims here, where it's led to them shipping a couple of 4s and a 3. But it's more of a worst case scenario of what can happen with that tactic. Generally, they do have good players, and they tend to get away with it because they've got good players. But it's just not an ideal tactic to use. So fairly even game, this one. You can pretty much decide for yourselves what you want to do with that information. It's really, really close. And in terms of player stats, so as we saw, only just over a goal a game for each team. So no surprise to see that nobody got double figures. Shearer's the best player out of the 2 teams, so there he is on top. Dublin, as we've mentioned before, that could well be Angel or Balaban. I have resimmed the game, ready for game week 9. I have resimmed the game and put Dublin's rep down and Angel's rep up a bit to try and stop this happening, because we know Angel is the favoured striker, but you can read that as being Angel or Balaban basically, because Dublin won't play. And again, as I mentioned before, touching on what Luke said at the end of his review preview, is in don't pay too much attention to the player stats. It's more important to look at how are both teams going to set up, and what does that mean for the goals in the game. That doesn't mean the player stats are completely useless. I wouldn't do them if I thought they were, but it's not really about the individual names. I've said this the last couple of weeks. It's more about seeing what positions are doing well, and is it 2 or 3 players hogging everything, or have we actually got a really long list of players that are, the returns are really spread out. So from doing these tables, we've seen teams like Derby, it's always the same 3 or 4 names appearing, isn't it? We know Christie, Ravanelli, Valakari and Burley, they're the men. So it is worth doing this because you get to see that kind of pattern coming out. But week by week, unless you have really massive numbers like we saw with Rude last week, scoring 20 plus, obviously take notice of that. Or people like Viduka, anybody that's nailed to start in their position, if they're getting really big numbers, then it's worth taking notice of. But when they're numbers like this, or if you see a list where there's 7, 8, 9 players in the list, the individuals aren't really too important. It's more about, is it midfielders scoring, is it strikers scoring, is it wingers scoring, that kind of thing. So like I say, I won't do it to death because I've mentioned this myself the last couple of weeks, and Luke's mentioned it again on his preview. So we're absolutely aligned there. So just bear that in mind. Okay, so that's Villa Newcastle. Blackburn Bolton. So Blackburn couldn't tell you what formation they're going to play. Sorry if you can hear my other half having a row with the cats. They've decided to have a tear up, obviously. Blackburn Bolton. Right, so Blackburn will attack. They're at home. They're higher rep than Bolton. Not sure what formation Blackburn will play. They're really changeable, as we've spoken about under Souness. Bolton will come not super defensive because Blackburn aren't the best team in the world. So yeah, normal is reasonable. But I think you know yourself, don't you? If you're a fan of this game, if you play this game, setting up with basically no team instructions is not ideal. It's not normally going to lead to great results. but it's not inconceivable they could score a goal with that, because they don't have men behind the ball and they're not super defensive. But Blackburn should win based on that. They've got the better team, they've got the better tactics, and that's what we're seeing here. 11 wins out of 20, 11 clean sheets out of 20. Bolton under a goal a game. They've scored four times, sorry. But yeah, a fair amount of blanks. So I expect Blackburn to win this one at home, and a reasonable chance of a clean sheet as well. In terms of returns then, so Bent, so we saw this in the double game week, didn't we? Actually, Bent coming out on top of Janssen, and then I kind of even said on the video, I think, I was like, ooh, that's a bit dodgy, because we know Janssen's the main man, but he did actually score in that double, didn't he? So we've seen when Blackburn played two up front, I think Bent has got just as good a chance as Janssen, really. It's just Blackburn's formation. Sometimes they only play one up front, and it will be Janssen. So yeah, but if they play two up, Bent's got a chance. Two guy from the central midfield. So this is quite interesting. We saw against Man City a couple of weeks ago, Flitcroft got really good returns against Bolton, and this is one of the examples where we're talking about individuals versus what the information is generally telling you. So maybe we're seeing a pattern here. Although Flitcroft didn't score against Bolton in the end, we're seeing another game here where not exactly a world beater, not a guy that scores every week by any means, in Sims is doing really well against Bolton from central midfield. So there's probably something in that as a general rule. So that's something we'll look out for going forward. Central midfielder against Bolton, maybe he's got some joy. Okay, so that's Blackburn Bolton. Derby Man United. So Derby, they're pretty crap. They're not terrible, but they're a bottom half team. But they're at home, so they will attack, even though it's Man United, and Man United are Man United, so they will also attack. So potentially an open game. So in terms of the 20 sims, Derby, you say potentially an open game, but their average goals is actually pretty low. I mean, they're just not, although they've played with a fairly reasonably aggressive tactic, they're just not that good against Man United, who are brilliant. So still only 0.7 goals a game, only one clean sheet, only 2 wins. But they did get the 2 wins, so 2 times out of 20. That attacking tactic has paid off. But yeah, still a fairly low chance. Man United scoring over 2 goals a game, 15 wins out of 20, around about a 50% chance of a clean sheet. So not as high as we've seen in previous weeks with Derby's attacking tactic. But still a fair chance. In terms of their ceiling, they've hit 5 a couple of times. They've hit 3 a few times as well. Yeah, only 1 blank and a few 1s. And we've also had a scout leak for them. So we know that Emerson and Chadwick will both start. But I think this is a little bit easier to read than the Arsenal one, where the scout said, what does it mean? For Arsenal, I don't think we know what it means. It could be limited to the 2 that he showed, or it could be a full rep. But for this one, Man United are away from home, so it definitely shouldn't be full rep. That just doesn't happen away from home. Emerson is in for the injured Roy Keane. Okay, so Roy Keane is injured. We saw that in Luke's preview / review. So that is the reason that Emerson is playing, and then Chadwick could just be a squad harmony thing. he could be in for Beckham or Giggs. I think he plays left and right. Which maybe I might just look at that now if I can actually, because I've got a Champman window open. There you go. Here we go. Premier Division, Man United. Yeah, Luke Chadwick plays left or right. So Beckham's been left out for Chadwick earlier in the season, hasn't he? Because he played all of last season basically, and he was the only senior player that played in the Charity Shield when everyone else was rested. So I think there's a fair chance that Chadwick will be in for Giggs, because Giggs has played a lot of games in a row. And yeah, I think maybe that could be it. It could be either. It could be Beckham or Giggs, but I think it's probably a squad harmony thing. Man United are away, so it shouldn't be full rep 12. So player stats then. So RVN looking good again. Strong fixture for Man United. 20 returns again, but it is more goals and assists. So we said last week that Rude's returns last week against Leicester were a bit more split than this between goals and assists, and he ended up getting the assist. But this week it looks more heavily towards goals. Beckham did well, but yeah, the Chadwick thing is a red flag for that. Veron did pretty well. Low numbers other than that. Well, Silvestre, to be on here from defence, is fairly impressive, I guess. But I think we've all got him anyway, haven't we? Everton, Watford. Everton will attack at home against the newly promoted Watford. And Watford, not too defensive. Gianluca Vialli, if you look at his preferences, he prefers an attacking style of play. So it's rare, if ever really, that Watford will go super defensive. Even when they're away from home, they'll normally go normal mentality at worst. So yeah, fairly similar really. Everton will attack it a little bit more. And that bears out in the average goals. Everton come out just about on top with the home advantage as well. 8 clean sheets out of 20, not too bad. Watford only a couple. Everton winning a lot of the time. And yeah, so they're ceiling, they've hit 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times they've hit 3 or more, so that's not too bad, is it? Again, Watford aren't brilliant, so it could happen. Only 1-0. So yeah, it looks a good game for Everton, doesn't it? Without being crazy good, Everton will probably win, and you've got a little chance of somebody going crazy with 3 or 4 goals. But yeah, not one to hugely target. I would say I think there's maybe better things to target. If you've already got someone like Kevin Campbell or GX, then stick them in your team. Don't waste your transfer on getting them out. They've got a reasonable chance. In terms of player returns, Gravesen came out on top for this. So we haven't seen a lot from Gravesen so far, but I've seen sims where Gravesen gets 20 returns plus in a season. So against a weak opposition at home, I'm not too surprised to see this. He's definitely capable. It's not as strange a one as like Gary Flitcroft was a couple of weeks ago against Bolton, where we've seen Bolton are maybe susceptible to conceding returns against a central midfielder. This isn't as weird as that, I would say, because I've seen Gravesen have seasons where he's absolutely smashed it. So as I say, at home against weak opposition, I'm not too surprised to see that, to be honest. But they've got Di Matteo as well now, who haven't been able to sim into the game yet. He'll be in my sims from next week onwards. But from I've managed to do 8 or 9 re-sims with Di Matteo in Everton's team, and he looks pretty good actually. So yeah, I wouldn't rule Di Matteo out in this game either, who will be also in Everton's midfield 3 that they play. Yeah, so Gravison or Di Matteo, I wouldn't rule that out at all against Watford this week. Or GX if he plays in that 3 as well. But who knows, he might play centre-back or up front or wherever. Leeds Chelsea. So yeah, I was quite surprised at this actually, but because I didn't have Graham Ricks's manager preferences sort of at the front of my mind. I just kind of think of Chelsea how I think of Chelsea, which has never been with him as manager, has it? But yeah, with him in charge, they will go into this game against a high rep team defensively, and Leeds will attack. So Chelsea are not going to give themselves as much of, with the talent that they've got. Chelsea won't give themselves the chance that they maybe could do under a different manager in this game. Leeds will attack and Chelsea will look to kill it. And given that Leeds are a really good team, Chelsea probably won't get away with it. Leeds averaging 2 goals a game, winning 12 out of 20, Chelsea winning only once. Leeds 10 clean sheets, Chelsea only 1 clean sheet. Leeds with a pretty high ceiling, they've scored 3 on a good few occasions and 4 a couple of times. Chelsea have only scored more than once, 1, 2, 3 times. So yeah, wouldn't have any money on Chelsea returns this week. Leeds pretty good. They've let us down a lot, but as I've said before, form isn't a thing, so there's no reason why this can't happen this week. And we've also had a leak for Leeds, so we know Nigel Martin is in goal and we know Ian Hart plays, which adds even more weight, I would say, to Leeds looking good for this game. They looked good last week. I was really disappointed actually that Ian Hart didn't play. I don't own Ian Hart, but just in terms of the sim data, I was disappointed Ian Hart didn't play, because I said last week, didn't I, Bolton will match Leeds' formation, which they did. And that looked really good for the fullbacks. And we saw in Luke's review that Harpal Singh had 3 shots on target and didn't score. And Gardner got man of the match. So who knows, if Ian Hart had been playing instead of Harpal Singh, maybe Gardner could have done well and Hart could have had a hat-trick. And my prediction of the fullbacks doing well in that game could have been looking really good. But there you go, Harpal Singh played instead. But Ian Hart will play this week. So player stats then, so not as strong as last week, but Viduka on top with basically his strike partner. It could be Keane or Smith. It looks like it will probably be Robbie Keane from what we've seen so far. But yeah, whoever plays alongside him tends to do pretty well. Ian Hart again does well in this game. As I say, Chelsea try and sit in, gives Hart plenty of space. Zenden is injured, so we're seeing Zenden and Carboni here. So we're talking about Chelsea wingers. So Zenden's injured, so maybe Gronkjar could get something instead of Zenden, or whoever plays ahead of him. But yeah, pretty low numbers from Chelsea. It's just that their returns were concentrated on the wings from the little returns that they did get. Leeds Chelsea, Leicester Borough. So Leicester at home will attack. Surprise, surprise. They play with direct passing. And Middlesbrough, Leicester aren't too high reps, so although they're away, they will go in with a normal mentality, which when you've got the attacking talent of Middlesbrough is not too bad. They won't put men behind the ball, so they'll give themselves a chance of scoring a goal, basically. And in terms of the 20 sim data, so absolutely equal. So Borough have got better players than Leicester just about, but because Leicester attack and Borough have a normal mentality, I think that makes sense for what we're seeing here. Leicester's favourable mentality means they're able to match Middlesbrough, even though they haven't got quite as good a team. But it's really close. So yeah, it's another one where do what you like with this data, really. There's no major tip to take from this. Player stats. So again, when you get a game that's really close, you tend to have a short list. But Middlesbrough's front two tended to be the ones that got the returns over the midfielders this time. And for Leicester, it tended to be Sturridge or is it coming from midfield? But yeah, pretty low numbers. So not a week. I know Zepeda and Johnson have done well for Middlesbrough so far, but maybe this isn't a game that suits the midfielders. Maybe it's a game that suits the front two more than them. Man City Ipswich. So Man City back to normality after their super defensive setup against Chelsea last week. They're back to attacking, no men behind the ball. They're short passing, which is, attacking and short passing is a good tactic for goals. Ipswich are going to come and not have a tactic. Again, as I mentioned, if you play the game, just doing nothing with this is normally not ideal. And Man City, given that, will tend to score on average a few more goals than Ipswich. They'll win more than Ipswich, and they'll keep a few more clean sheets than Ipswich. So yeah, Man City back to sort of normal really after that away game against Chelsea. High ceiling. They've scored 3 multiple times. They've scored 4 once. Ipswich themselves aren't terrible. But yeah, just over a goal a game. But that's dragged up slightly by a couple of threes. Or four, or more than a couple. They've scored 3-4 times, so that average is dragged up by their ceiling. But if you look at their mean, there's a reasonable chance of City keeping a clean sheet, and there's definitely more chance of City scoring goals than Ipswich. Really, it's not impossible for Ipswich. It's just more likely for Man City. Millwall Liverpool. So Millwall will set up normal. So I think they're the only team this week that aren't attacking at home. So that's Mark McGee's management style really. He'll be cautious, especially against the bigger teams. So Liverpool coming to town, they're the only team this week that won't set up attacking. But they still don't have men behind the ball. So it's not as offensive as it could be. And Liverpool, much higher rep than Millwall, will go away and attack. And that's borne out in the 20 sims. So Liverpool, so if this was at Anfield, Millwall would go definitely would go defensive rather than normal, and you'd see Liverpool's clean sheet chance would be probably almost double that. It would probably be 11, 12, 13 rather than 7. So the fact is that the Den, Millwall won't go super defensive, and they do have a chance of scoring a goal, but Liverpool will still probably win. They'll still probably score a couple at least. Yeah, just don't bank on the clean sheet. And in terms of player returns then, so Owen and Fowler are Liverpool's preferred front two, although Fowler seems like he might be sulking again in this sim, so maybe more weight towards Owen than Fowler if you do want to go for a Liverpool attacker. In terms of the midfield, Schmeitzer and Berger, but as I've said lots of times, Liverpool's midfield really unreliable. So again, it's about the position. So this is the left-hand side again, isn't it? So I said this in a previous week. I can't remember exactly what fixture it was, but I said Liverpool's left-hand side of midfield looks good for a goal. And then in the game, with all the substitutions they made, 3 different players scored from the left-hand side of midfield. So again, it's not about individuals, it's thinking about if Schmeitzer and Berger are both on here, what does that mean for the position on the pitch that's doing well, and who would I back to play in that position, given what I know about the sim we're playing. So again, that's the left-hand side, isn't it? Finally, Sunderland Spurs. So they will both attack this game, which is probably no surprise. But the Sunderland and Spurs are both pretty good for goals, aren't they? Whether it's in their net or in the opposition's net. So they're both going to set up exactly the same, and they're going to go at each other, which is pretty cool. So who knows what could happen in this game? And there you go. That bears it out. Who knows what will happen? It's almost an identical pairing again, but just with a higher average goals than Leicester Borough was. Yeah. Who knows? I think Luke said this in his preview review. Anything could happen in this game. Both teams to score though looks almost nailed on. But yeah, it's going to be one of those on the day. Who gets the luck? Is it going to be Phillips that gets 4 shots on target and doesn't score, or will it be Rebrov that gets 4 shots on target and doesn't score? It will come down to that kind of thing, which way it goes. In terms of player stats, so in my sims it was Rebrov that came out on top more often than not. But you can almost write this off. Really, you've seen it's a toss of a coin here. But I guess all this tells you really is that when Spurs did win, it tended to be the striker that did well. Selakovic probably had a couple of penalties. So yeah, so I guess you could take that. Rebrov is more likely to get something than one of the midfielders, but I mean, is that really news? It isn't really, is it? Phillips and Laslandes were equal, so I think Sabon is favoured over Laslandes in our sim, so you could just swap that for Sabon really. And that's that, I think. So yeah, that's everybody. So picks of the week. Reid van Nistelrooy, strong fixture away to Derby. I wouldn't panic about the Scout League. They're away from home, so they shouldn't fully rep. Emerson is in for the injured Keane, and then it really wouldn't surprise me if Chadwick was the only other change. But don't hold me to it. But they're away from home, so that's what should happen. Henry, different story. Edu and Stefan Voss starting is a bit of a red flag. It could easily be a full rep 12. That's much less unpredictable because they're at home. So it could be full rep, it could be part rep. One Shop, a good fixture at home. They will attack in that game, so not surprised to see him on the list here. Rebrov against Sunderland. I'd put less weight against that one because Sunderland could be the one that comes out on top. And Gravison, as I said, that makes sense for me. I've seen him smash it in season-long sims, and they're at home to weak opposition. But Everton do also have Di Matteo, who looks good for a few returns in an Everton shirt, from what I've seen so far. So that's it then. Good luck with the game week, and a Merry Christmas to you all. I will be back for the game week. What are we, game week 9? I get confused about this because I'm always a week ahead. I'll be back for the game week 9 preview. I will do my very best to record it so it's out the usual time, or at least a couple or a few days before we actually play it, which will be the 30th of December, I believe. So I'll do my very best to get it out a few days before then. But Merry Christmas to you all. It's my birthday tomorrow, so I'll be out on the beers, and I'll forget all about this until then. But I'll do my best to get the game week 9 one done. I'll definitely publish it at some point before the actual game week. Okay, cheers everybody, and good luck. One more thing. Good luck to Motley Barnett's, who I'm playing in the Sean Wright Phillips Cup. He's a legend. He's a man behind the scenes. You'll notice him in the credits on a Thursday night. He does the fixture difficulty tracker. He's the guy that posts the results from the same fixtures last season, and I'm sure there's more behind the scenes that he does to get that credit that appears on a Thursday night. So thank you for all you do at Motley Barnett's, and may the best team win in the Sean Wright Phillips Cup. Okay, cheers everyone. See you. Goodbye.